Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor-Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
and me, Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair. This recording takes place in Greater Detroit. Justin Rogers is a Black American poet, an educator, a coach, and editor from Detroit, Michigan. Rogers shares poems surrounding living and praying as a Black man in America. He most recently has work published in Tinderbox Poetry Journal, Gramma Press, is author of micro-zine Nostalgia as Black Matilda with Rinky Dink Press, and released his chapbook Black Matilda in 2019 with Glass Poetry Press. He's also the coordinator of InsideOut's after-school program, Citywide Poets. Justin's journey with InsideOut began first as a student at Cody High School, where a writer-in-residence encouraged his writings and recruited him to join Citywide Poets. Since then, Justin has performed for international audiences and published his writing widely. Justin now coordinates the Citywide Poets program, elevating youth voice through weekly sessions around the city, guest writer workshops, performances, and open mic opportunities for youth. He's also the Detroit representative for Poets and Writers. Founded in 1970, Poets and Writers is the nation's largest nonprofit organization serving creative writers by fostering the professional development of poets and writers and promoting communication throughout the literary community. So welcome to Justin. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So let's talk about your community work, which is sensational. You were a student in the Inside Out program, which you now have graduated and helped coordinate. So what was that like for you? What was that experience?
It was a great experience. So Inside Out Literary Arts, as you mentioned, they have the after-school program known as Citywide Poets, which has multiple locations across the city where students aged 13 to 19 get a chance to work in small groups with a local, usually published, well-renowned artist. So the artist that came and recruited me, her name was Nandi Comer, and she brought me to the after-school site over on the west side of Detroit, that also had Jamal May. And Jamal May and Nandi Comer have grown in the local community and kind of in the national writers community. So it's now having a chance to look back and say, wow, I had these two mentors. I feel like I really had it going on back then and didn't know it. So I kind of say that to say, it was great, but I had no idea how great it was until I had a chance to really reflect on the situation. So I was going to the weekly sessions leading into the spring of my first and last year. We do a poetry slam, and at that time the poetry slam decided the 5-person team that would go to the international competition known as Brave New Voices. So that first year I had a chance to compete. I made the team. So I kind of really went from this casual writer to, hey, I'm on this slam team, and now I'm traveling to a place I've never been before. And having the opportunity to see the larger literary community, seeing folks brought in from overseas, seeing folks from across the country coming to one city for 1 week, not just for the poetry slams, but also for the workshops, just to hang out in the middle of the night and read poems. It was really a transformative experience. So that's what it was like. It was a transformative experience.
That's awesome. And it shaped your writing too.
Absolutely, without question. I don't think I would be the sort of writer I am at this point in my life had it not been for Citywide Poets. And the encouragement from Nandi and Jamal, of course. At the time, I was slowly starting to reach towards fanfic. So I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. And I was starting to read the series a little bit late, but at that time I'm also like, hey, I can write my own Harry Potter. This is great. I can do this. And then found poetry because I went to New York on a small vacation, if you will. I was 13, 14, went with my stepfather. And I was really deeply into the singer Aaliyah at the time. So I was listening to a lot of Aaliyah, and I missed a girl back home in Detroit. This is so wholesome, y'all. I'm like, I have to write a poem, so using some of those lyrics. And that's kind of how I started writing my first poems. Came back to Detroit, had an assignment in my English classroom, found Citywide Poets. So, there was a lot of luck. It all really fell into place for me.
Well, if it was a transformative experience, this first big poetry slam and being on the team and whatnot, what were some of the big ahas that you got out of it? What did you realize? It was like, wow.
I think the main thing I realized is there's a world of other folks out here who actually care about writing. And I think that statement stops there. I think for a lot of folks, it cares about writing and performing, or cares about slam, or cares about kind of all these extra things that come after you do the writing. But for me, it was, hey, there are other folks here who really take the time and write. And want to do that and don't think it's weird, and want to come together and share that writing. So I think that's the main thing. Beyond that, being able to know that everybody was young, I think that went a long way too. So I think those are the main two takeaways from that experience. And then, of course, there were the workshops, there were the poetry slams, there were the poems that I heard, there were the new things, the new metaphors that I didn't know you can make that led me to my new metaphors. So those small nuances.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you bring as a coordinator now to the program? What do you think that from that experience and now your own writing you bring, or what would you like to bring?
I think the most important thing that I can do as a coordinator is attempt to get as much information from the youth who are students in the program now, and apply their ideas and apply their desires, and really take a chance to think about what they've presented me and find a way to make that a real thing. So one of the things that we have now is first draft open mics. They are open mics that happen throughout the city, but they are really tailored towards each of the after-school locations. And the idea of having a first draft open mic was an idea from a student 4, maybe 5 years ago at this point. So being able to say, hey, I remember that idea from before I was a coordinator. I want to bring this idea and do this. We have a youth advisory board now, so we're thinking a little bit more about leadership and how students more formally give ideas forward. So I'm looking forward to finding more opportunities to utilize that board. Hey, what do y'all want to see happen next year? Or what will make Citywide Poets successful for you 10 years from now? And really finding a way to make something that's not just, we did this cool thing this year, but also this is longevity. This is going to build forward for whoever's the next coordinator after me. So I really want to make sure that the students' voice and what they see the program can be is somehow looped into the program, even if I can't do every little thing.
So from when you were a student in the program to now, what do students want that's the same, and what do they want that's maybe a little different?
That's a good question. I think that when I say we in this context, I'm going to say myself as a student back in 2009. We definitely wanted more events, more opportunities to get on stage and see each other. The students definitely still want that now, even though we've really loaded up with events. They're still like, hey, let's do another one. Can we do something else? Can we do something tomorrow night? Guys, I can't just get a venue that quick. So there's a desire to actually be active on the stage and see your peers on stage. And that's something that I think is a parallel. I don't think there are too many differences, actually. There's been a lot of asks for multiple days of the week for our sessions. So our sessions currently are once per week, 2 hours after school on that day, reoccurring every week. So we've been asked about what would it take to do 2-3 days a week, what would it take to do a whole week. And I mean, to be honest and transparent, it would take more money. We have to pay the artists. But, to know that the students want the program and want to see it expand, I think is the main parallel. We've wanted to see it expand when I was younger. Folks still want to see it expand now. So trying to figure out how to expand it but not beyond its means is interesting, kind of going from a student perspective to a coordinator perspective. But yeah, I don't think there are too many differences in desire, other than, now we have Instagram, so they want us on Instagram.
Okay.
Back then we wanted them on Facebook, so, growth.
Fashion changes.
How many places do these after-school programs take?
This year we are in 15 after-school locations,
Wow.
both high school and middle school. When I was a young person, I want to say they were at 4 sites, and I think
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it grew a little bit in there and then dipped back down to where I believe there was 2 sites at a point. So the program has grown and shrunk in different ways, but this is the largest it's ever been, and I think this is the largest it's kind of stayed 10 and the longest it's ever stayed 10 and above. I want to say we're at 3 years at 10 and above now, so we're trying to sustain a large program that really reaches a lot of students. So we are opening a lot of kind of old boxes and getting some archives from Citywide Poets. And when the organization was established back in '95, so we're seeing documents and seeing old flyers from like 2000 and 2001 when Citywide Poets was established, a little bit separate from what InsideOut does. InsideOut puts writers in the schools primarily and does work during the school day. And Citywide Poets was an extension of that program, working in the after-school realm. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of discovering things and finding old flyers that use language like, come be a part of our jiggy workshop. Who uses that language nowadays? So it's really interesting. Is kind of doing flashbacks like that and seeing what's come, what was before me, what was during me, what's happened now. Like generations have really come a long way. It's interesting.
Our jiggy workshop.
Yeah,
I love it.
It was great.
So now you also bring other artists in to work with the students during this. How does that work out?
Yes, absolutely. So of course, each of our after-school locations has their own 2 writers. So we have, I believe, 10 different writers across the 15 sites. So, all the students have different chances to see those writers through events and, of course, their own site. We do a visiting artist series known as Scratch the Page, and that brings one traveling artist into the city to do a workshop. The students have an open mic, and then that artist reads. We do that event at the Museum of Contemporary Arts. We have about 5 every year or every school year. And we try to get a range of different folks. So we want someone who's kind of close by, who might not be super big on the map. But then we also want to go for somebody who's really out there. So this year, or just recently actually, we had Jericho Brown. That's kind of like our big one. And we've had other names that are up and rising. So Rach Jackson, who just dropped her book, you should check her out. Lauren Bullock, who's doing some great work in her city in Columbus and across the Midwest. So, we try to make sure that we're getting different sorts of artists in, bringing different genres sometimes, making sure that we're getting different voices, different perspectives. So that's one way. We're also just connected with a lot of artists who have either been writers with us in the past and who have gone on to do books. We're connected to a ton of folks who want to come back and do the work with us. So a lot of times our visiting artists are just folks who are coming through the city and say, hey, I know InsideOut. What do y'all have going on? Can I do something?
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And you had a couple of students go on to win scholarships with their poetry.
Yes.
So can you tell us about that?
Yes. So most recently, and I'm still fuzzy on the details and still trying to get it all together so we can be more of an official part of this. Detroit Public Schools Community District, DPSCD, has a scholarship through what I believe is a talent show. And 2 of our students entered into that, Dina and Charles. Dina won the first place prize, which I believe was $25,000, and Charles won the second place prize, which I believe was $10,000. Right? So that was from their poetry. Wow. We recently also launched our own scholarship program. We have an anonymous donor who wanted to take their donation to the next level and said, hey, I want to do a scholarship for a Citywide Poet every year. So we're talking about $25,000 for 4 years, like $25,000 each year. I want to make that super clear. For one Citywide Poet every year. And we just awarded our most recent one to Mahalia Hill, who is also this year's Youth Poet Laureate. So, we have a lot going on. We're trying to do better with thinking about how to connect students from from high school to whatever the other thing is that they want to do. Some students want to do college, some students want to go in some other directions. So we're trying to think more about how we are supportive in that gap.
That's awesome. What a great success. Yeah. So do they have schools picked out where they want to go yet? Or the scholarship is for anything?
The scholarship is for wherever they want to go.
Okay. So what's the most rewarding part about that success for you as the coordinator and educator who's helping them develop?
I think the most rewarding part for me is just seeing them dive in and really take the space and do with it what it is meant for, whether that be writing the next greatest thing or just writing out some feelings so they can get to tomorrow. That could be, them working on their book. That might be them winning whatever that slam is. That might be them really deeply in their feelings and they're dropping a tear. That might be them just laughing. Whatever really it is that they need in that space, I think it's rewarding for me to see them be able to grasp that in a safe space where somebody's not going to judge them, where we really push out negative language, where we're really trying to be helpful and build upon one another. So that happens, of course, again, in the after-school sessions, but all of our events is kind of where it's really prominent to the community, where you see the students really, really go into it. Some of our students come up to our office space and have a chance for more one-on-one work opportunities where they use our computers, whether that be for homework or to write a poem or just because they need to blow some steam or whatever that is for this particular moment. So seeing them do the poetry, and I use poetry as a very, very, very broad term in this space.
That's awesome. So let's switch a bit and talk about poets and writers. Can you tell our audience a little bit about how about its mission and how it fosters the professional development?
Absolutely. So Poets and Writers is a really awesome organization. They've been around for, I want to say this is year 50. They have, of course, the flagship magazine that they've been doing for a long time, which has a number of amazing resources for writers. If you're looking for contests, if you're looking for where to submit your book, if you're looking for who to read, who's up and coming, what's happening, interviews, so on and so forth, you have to get the Poets and Writers magazine subscription. It really goes a long way for just keeping you current as a writer. Of course, a lot of that information is also available online on their website, pw.org. But in addition to what they have on their information from the magazine, there's a directory of writers where you can see who in the world is writing and where they are physically in the world, which might give you a better idea for if there's a bookable person or not. There's also there are different opportunities for you to go in and look at our literary events calendar. So if you go into our literary events calendar, you'll be able to see what's happening locally, but also internationally, and that also links you to different literary venues in your cities. So there's just a lot of information that Poets and Writers puts forward for writers who are looking. And I find writers looking a lot. So just being able to go to a website and see this kind of hub, home base where everything is awesome. In addition to that, and for this in particular, what Poets and Writers is doing in Detroit, New Orleans, and Houston is having an literary outreach coordinator be in those communities and report back to the offices in New York so that they can support our areas better. One of our tasks, of course, is letting everybody know about our mini grants. So we have a mini grant opportunity for anybody in the city of Detroit who is putting on a literary event. We have funds specifically for poets or writers of any kind who are performing or leading some sort of workshop. Right? I want to go over that one more time. We have grant opportunities for anyone in Detroit who has a writer who is doing a performance or leading a workshop. This is free for you to apply to. Now, when I say the word grants, that usually freaks a lot of folks out. Anybody who has had to do a grant report, that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh, yay.
I know, right? The mini grants are very easy. It takes maybe 15 minutes to get everything in, a little bit quicker after you register your account and you kind of pass that very first, hey, welcome to Poets and Writers. You're going to need information about the writer, information about your event. and then you're sending it on, and then you're hearing back in 2 to 4 weeks about if your poet is funded or not. It's super simple. You can always reach directly out to poets and writers to call, and they will walk you through the application process. We really try to make this as accessible as possible, and I really want to note that we really want to make sure that we're making these funds available for writers of color. I've noticed as the literary outreach coordinator in this area that the grants are largely eaten up by folks who are either not Detroit proper or otherwise tied to an organization. And while I want those spaces to be able to access our funds, I want the open mic who is doing late night poetry at 10 p.m. in the bar to also be able to access that funds. And you can. So I want to make sure that folks understand what the Poets and Writers mini grants are, and that's a large part of my work. And also discovering new events. So being able to discover, if you will, Poets and Pies, and be able to let other folks know about it, and let other folks know about the writers who are involved with that. So being able to expose folks to ML Liebler and the other writers who are able to touch those stages is also a big part of my work. And I think that's really where Poets and Writers is deeply getting it right. Being able to have somebody here on the ground who lives here, who has been immersed in the community for a long time, and can just talk back really openly about what are some of the challenges that we're having, what are some of the different supports that we could use here to build the community up. I think this program has really gone a long way.
And what are some of the challenges, and what are some of the things you could use? What are you looking at trying to do?
Absolutely. So I think that one of the largest questions I've had is, does Poets and Writers cover fees for hosts or venues? We do not. We specifically cover the artist in particular. We want to get the artist paid. But I see that as a struggle and a barrier for many folks.
Yeah.
Lots of folks would love to be able to put on a reading, but where?
Yeah.
I see a lot of readings, especially the ones that, again, aren't tied to an organization or kind of outside of the city of Detroit. Most of them are later night spaces, either in bars or spaces that they've kind of like worked out an agreement with. All for that, I love it. And I think that there are challenges with getting different audience members to those specific events. So if you're not in a well-populated bar, or if you're in a gallery that doesn't have a lot of foot traffic, we'll often see a lot of the same poets in that space. So we see poets performing for poets, which is a beautiful, again, transformative space, like I spoke to about the Brave New Voices experience. But when it goes to really building up the brand of the open mic or the series as something that that has longevity and is going to be reaching larger audiences, it's hard to get folks out. It's hard to get folks into those spaces. I think that's largely because of public transportation. I think that's largely because of just a disconnect between different neighborhoods. So, there are a lot of challenges that are out of our control as writers and as organizers that I think I personally try to resolve by making sure we're taking the events to them or taking it to the different communities. But that kind of goes back to like the venue issue. So it's an interesting back and forth between those two things that happens a lot. Yeah. And I think another thing is everybody kind of being in the know. There are a lot of poetry things that happen in the city. Lots of novelists in the city. Lots of different genres outside of writing that come together and do different things. And at the same time, two people who do the exact same thing may never cross paths. And may need the information that one another has. And I want to see that come together. I want the network to build. I want the network to be a little bit stronger. I want hosts across the city to know when a poet is coming into the city so that we can find a way to make their visits to the city financially feasible for them as a traveling artist and things of that nature. So I think there's just building community, continuing to do what we're doing, and hopefully some of the gentrification that we're seeing downtown will give us some benefits.
There you go.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for giving us that overview, and it's so important to share the word, that's for sure. So we'd like to talk a little, we started on this a little bit earlier, but let's come back to Justin the Poet. So we heard some of your wonderful poetry on an earlier podcast and a couple of weeks ago, and you were using pop culture references in your work, like the Harry Potter series and the children's movie Matilda, and which I love referring things back to Harry Potter, and we have a dear friend who is sort of like, was that a Harry Potter reference again? And I said, yeah, that was it. But what is it that attracts you to references like that, to allusions like that?
I think for me, it's being able to have something that I can grasp onto that really gives it some weight for me. So I think you using a character goes a long way for me, because it's this person that's not necessarily me, so there's a little bit of distance there. I think that goes a long way for anybody who's a writer, being able to get out whatever it is, but it also allows me to be a little bit fantastical. It makes me feel like I have the agency to kind of go a little bit out there in a way that I wouldn't have gone before if I were talking about just a regular human. Being able to use any character in Harry Potter allows me to use magic in a way that the reader, if they know what Harry Potter is, most folks do, even if they haven't read the book, I throw magic in there without question, because we're talking about Harry Potter. And I think having the liberties that come with using a character or a very physical thing from pop culture helps me feel like, okay, this is rooted already. There's some information that comes here with this poem already that I don't have to explain. I feel like poetry is very effective when you're able to say a lot in a little space. I'm also a very short person. I like to condense things as much as possible. So being able to get it all into a very small space makes me feel good in my writing. So again, that character goes a long way without me feeling like I have to explain everything from scratch.
So the reference is kind of one of the language tools that you use.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of social justice in Harry Potter as well. I mean, there's that meme going around saying, you know, I wanted my life to be like Harry Potter. I didn't realize it would be all book 5 with teenagers, you know, rising up against a corrupt government. So, is there an element of that in your work, do you think, or?
Yes and no. I think that I've done some hard work to isolate the character from some of the things that are happening within the world that they're meant to live in. So the writing that I've been doing using some of the Harry Potter characters, I need to dive further into that actually, have really, again, just kind of been a way for me to say, okay, I want to be magical in this setting. And the way that it feels most comfortable to me is to, instead of me hopping into Harry Potter world and, oh, I'm at Hogwarts, which I feel like is the easy way out, how can I bring them to me instead? What does it mean for that person to live in this space? And then I can choose, I want you to bring this part of your storyline with you or not. And I can kind of change it and shift things up. Or if I want to make you black, I can. If I want to make you taller, I can. If I want to dress you a different way, I can.
Mm-hmm. So this is what it's like for that character to live in my world.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. You're surrounded by poetry. How do you choose the ideas and topics for your own work?
Choosing my ideas and topics is tough. I have a plethora of ideas on a regular basis, but I also have a plethora of tasks to take care of. So sometimes it's just literally about the time being able to get to those things. But I'm a millennial, so I have my iPhone, and there's I don't like the notes. What I like is Google Tasks. If anybody knows about Google Tasks, it has an app, of course, that is just a bullet point list. So I could just type a quick idea in there. But the cool thing about the Google Tasks is when I open my Google Calendar, it's a little thing over on the side, and I can pop it up and see it in the middle of my work, say, oh, that was a cool idea, then put it away in the middle of the day. Or if I just want to see all my ideas at once, then I can pull that whole list up and kind of choose something versus kind of having to pick and choose between what I've written down in the past. But when I have decided, hey, this is my writing space, we're about to get this thing done, it's really whatever's pulling on me most at that moment, and whatever I feel like I can really dive into and that I have an interest in. And I think that's really open and vague, but it's true. It's if I really feel like reading or writing about Harry Potter today, then that's what we're diving into. And I think for me that comes with a feeling of wanting to also read Harry Potter and wanting to watch Harry Potter and wanting to meet, maybe not Harry Potter himself, some of the other characters. There's a really deep immersion that I kind of feel when I'm ready to write about a particular topic. It's not just, hey, I feel like writing about water today. It's, I need to drink some water, I need to write the water, I need to feel the water, we're gonna hop in the shower, let's go get in the bath, and like kind of really feel this and do the thing. So when I'm writing about a character, I'm bringing those books along. It really looks like I'm studying. So it probably looks a lot more intimidating than the process actually is.
So you're doing a lot of mentoring nowadays, and who's your mentor now? You mentioned some of your early mentors, and who is sort of your guiding light now? Who helps to mentor you?
That's tough. I'm trying to figure that out. I think at the current moment, I've been working really hard with Citywide Poets and kind of really expanding and kind of taking on this new role with poets and writers, and thinking of myself as not just a writer and a poet, but also as an organizer and an event planner and organizer and a connections maker. And like, I think there are a lot of different tasks I've taken on outside of the writing within the writing community that I think are very valuable, but that I also see how one loses the writing in the process of that. So I don't have somebody in particular that I would say, hey, this is my mentor right now. But of course, folks that I look up to, I have to throw my wife in there. She's a writer, poet, Brittany Rogers. Check her out. All gushy and stuff, warm and fuzzy. I love you. So, you know, it's always great to be able to kind of have somebody who's also there and is a I don't like to say professional writer, but for this case, a professional writer who really dives into this and wants to do this, and kind of seeing them do their process and get, she's getting her manuscript together. She's done different residencies and workshops of that nature. So kind of seeing somebody else there who's kind of close to me do the thing feels really good and makes me feel like, okay, you know, whenever I'm ready to like kind of like set these other things aside or put them on autopilot because I feel like they're where I want them to be, I can really tap back into this very quickly because I have this person right here. So, you know, I look to her, I look to my friends. I think they're my saving grace.
So would you like to read a couple of poems for us?
Sure, I would totally love to read some poems. So I didn't bring any Harry Potter poems today, but that's all right. So this poem is something I wrote a little bit over a year ago. I have a son by the name of Eli. He is 4 now. In the poem, it's 3, so that's how I know the timeline. He's 4 now, about to be 5, and he is running so all crazy. So we, of course, look very much alike. We have kind of like the same hair, and he needs to get glasses, so I'm sure we're going to look exactly the same as soon as he gets facial hair. It's going to be amazing. But I felt compelled to kind of write about the similarities from face to face. This is titled, Eli Faces His Face. My son, Eli, is 4. Everyone says that his side eyes write novels in one glance. My face is the stencil book that Eli uses to sketch his feelings. I am 28 now and I know better, but my face doesn't know how to keep the eyebrow low, the mouth shut, hold the smile like a lie either. My face is a bad blueprint, a misleading map spilling what is wrong with him over every conversation that my cheekbones visit. I feel like a 4-year-old, like he's so cute, until you ask him to do something, until he wants to change the subject, and then I become fake. What's wrong with him? Why he do his face like that? At 28, Eli will begin to feel how one end of his mouth becomes a fisherman's hook, piercing every word it doesn't agree with. His smile's an inherited delusion where every conversation is bait, his jaw a question marking his face rogue, untrustworthy, never saying what's on his mind, so shady, he must not check the mirror, no home training. What will his children do with faces so quick to reveal the tongue before it is ready to slice? So that's one poem. I'm going to shift over and read a poem or two out of Black Matilda. Black Matilda is published by Glass Poetry Press and is available on their website. I want to give a shout out to Anthony Frame for being a great publisher and helping me work through this. Black Matilda was a bit of a dream that I had back in 2014, 15, and I thought, hey, this is definitely not an idea that's going to catch, guys. I don't think it's going to go well, but I got some positive feedback from some early poems, again, from my friends. And I decided to keep on going with the book, and here we are. So I'm going to read one of the Matilda-based poems. If anyone has seen the movie Matilda, there is the closet with the spikes in it within the school. It is called The Chokey, and this poem is titled The Chokey in 3 Body Parts. The mouth. The mouth, when opened, doesn't know whose name will fall out, and this puts the whole hood on its best eavesdrop. Who gets choked next? What tea can be made of the flesh when pulverized? The audience tells myths about the jaw, says every name that goes in comes out with less cares to give and is only valuable with someone inside of it. The fingers. The fingers have 2 homes, the guts of a swisher and pockets splitting with cash. They curl fetal position behind the palm, taste the I wish he would, taste the wishes come true, taste Flamin' Hots, taste Lil Wayne mixtapes, taste the nails smelling of weed picked from the wicker of lawn furniture. We let nothing go to waste here. The fingers form gun barrels, triggered by trap bass, so you know what's really good, so you know how they survive when there is nowhere else to turn. The stomach, or the heart, stays empty, always baking soda in the fridge, fresh though, always promising until it's open and there's nothing you like. I bet you keep coming back though. I bet you open it again and pick around the rot, like something lived here, like something was eaten alive but not whole. What souvenirs did you expect to be abandoned by so much consuming? And I'm going to give one last poem from the book. So, of course, the book deals with Matilda and kind of uses her as a character throughout. But there is also a lot of God in the book. So I am a Christian, and I believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus of color. And I think that that's a very interesting and controversial take in some aspects. I think it's common sense, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm trying to decide which of the poems I want to go with. And I think I am going to go with a friend favorite, if you will. What is more holy, clapback or hallelujah? 1. What you thought this was? Who hasn't been blessed with a properly placed punchline popping somebody's Twitter ego? Words become prayers when you clap for each syllable. Clapback happens when somebody who you wished would, did, and it's time to get the Lord involved. Time to teach the side of a neck what that praise hand do. What you thought it was to sin, to clap back. To sin? We used to clap with clips, and now the tongue does the job just fine. God knows we fear voices more than bullets. 2. What would Jesus do? Jesus would clap back. What you expect from someone willing to be crossed to save the hood? Yes, Jesus saved my hood, made having a father like having a dull switchblade in a fist fight. Gave the fatherless a clapback testimony bloody enough to make the parent privileged praise a God who stays ready to snap no matter who you ain't got. No matter how gutter you got to get to teach the devil how to fix his face when you talk hallelujah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin Rogers. That was awesome.
Awesome. It's great to be here. It's great reading poems. It's great to be here on the podcast. Thank you all for holding this space.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.